Well, welcome back to another episode of Winning Through Culture. I am excited to be here today with Jeff Haney, president of ECM. Welcome, Jeff.
Good morning, Tim. Thanks for having me.
Oh, it's great to have you. So this is a part of our series on best places to work, and ECM has been consistently recognized by the Charlotte Business Journal as one of the best places to work in the greater Charlotte area. So first off, congratulations to you and your team for that. That's quite an accomplishment.
Well, thank you, Tim.
Absolutely. For those maybe just starting out, Jeff, for those less familiar with ECM, why don't you tell us a little bit about the ECM story, how the company began and what it stands for and its work with its clients?
Be happy to, Tim. And it's ironic we're doing this right now because in 2 days on September 1st, we'll be celebrating 35 years of being in business.
Congratulations.
So we are one of, if not the largest, independently owned insurance agency in the Carolinas. It was started September 1, 1987 by Arnold Edwards, Bart Church, and Jim Muse. So that is the Edwards Church and Muse, Inc. that started the company. We've shortened that to ECM Solutions now, but started 35 years ago by three guys that had a vision, had an idea of wanting to build an independent insurance agency that was a little different from the places they had worked. And after 35 years and growing to about 80 people, I think it's turned out pretty good.
Yeah, well, congratulations. That's quite an accomplishment, 35 years. You mentioned, they had a vision of doing things a little bit differently than what they were accustomed to previously as they came together. What are some of the core tenets of the principles that, they guided them in the formation of ECM and that have still existed 35 years later?
I think really empowering the people in the agency, hiring professionals, treating them like professionals, letting them do their jobs, not getting hung up on the small stuff, but worrying about the bigger items a lot more. They wanted it to be a place that people enjoyed coming to work. They wanted it to be a place that people felt like they mattered, that they weren't just another number. Mm-hmm. And they wanted people to really understand that together they were trying to build something unique and very different. And I think that philosophy kind of flowed over into everything that we still do today. We have formally adopted some core values about 10 or 12 years ago that drive us today. But a lot of those core values came from the beginnings of the agency 35 years ago.
Wow. It's nice to see the thread, if you will, over a 35-year period. And I know because a part of our business is in the insurance business and you're in the commercial side, we're in the insuring people side. And, the profession has been accused in the past of being transactional. It sounds like, though, you guys really leaned into the relational side of not only valuing your clients, but valuing the people that supported those clients.
Absolutely, Tim. Those are the relationships we're looking for, much like you. It's not a transactional thing for us. We're really charged with the responsibility of helping businesses and individuals insure the assets that they've spent a lifetime building in some cases. And a lot of businesses that have multiple families that rely on them and the job they have to take care of their families. Mm-hmm. So for us, it's a lot more than just a transactional relationship. It is one where relationships matter. And that is one of our 4 core values is relationships matter.
Oh, wow. Perfect. It's an easy one to remember too. And one of the key things of any company that's recognized as the best place to work is obviously it's the people that make that decision. It's, as I've discussed in previous episodes, the vetting process that the Business Journal uses with an outside firm to determine who gets selected and how they get ranked is pretty scientific and substantial, but it's the people in the organization that ultimately provide the feedback anonymously and confidentially to help the determination there. So when you think about the people side of the business, Jeff, what are the core principles that you look for or try to assess for when you do hire someone into ECM?
Well, first and foremost, Tim, we want to make sure they do meet our core values. And our 4 core values are act with integrity, be humbly confident, relationships matter, and continuous improvement. And we think that kind of embodies the type of individual we're looking for. And in our interview process, that's really the first thing we try to ferret out. Is this someone that's going to add to the culture? Someone that's going to be a building block for the agency? Or is it going to be someone that's going to take away from the culture and kind of suck the life out of things? And we really don't want to know if they can do the job until we know they're a fit culturally for us, because you can have the best person doing a task in the world, but if they're going to tear down your culture, they're really not someone you should add to the mix.
Yeah, I think the key thing in not only the formation, but then the protection of a culture is it is definitely about the contributions that the person in the organization is making, really from the place of who they are versus what they do. There's a great book that Dan Sullivan published. He co-authored it, and I'm forgetting a second author, but it was called Who Not How. And it was basically on the premise of when you have an important role to fill, look at who the person is, not how they're going to do the job. So that emphasis of your core values of integrity, humility, and relationship are really, I can see things that you can lean into, but you can also really assess in a candidate. What have been some of the challenges? Because we talk about a lot of culture building ideas on this podcast, but at the end of the day, it's not all butterflies and sunshine. There's some real challenges. But what have been some of the more challenging aspects of building this culture, building a collaborative, impactful, best place to work?
Yeah, I think for us, it's the fear of letting go. The fear of letting go of things that we've done in the past, because those have been things we've done in the past. It's also been having to believe in the vision of where we're going and how are we going to get there. And sometimes when you're having to make difficult decisions that may mean you're eliminating people because they're the wrong person in the wrong seat, that's pretty scary at times, because you just can't see where you're going and can't really visualize how it's going to turn out. And so you have that fear of making these changes without absolutely knowing where you're going to wind up with all of this. And so for us, I think that was probably some of the difficulty in getting started. But once we got started and got going down the path, I think the vision became much clearer. I think we started to see some of the results. And I think that just having that confidence and that faith of believing in what we wanted to accomplish and the culture we wanted to build allowed us to keep moving down the road and finally get to where things became very clear and the culture changed. And it's been a magical thing when you get down the road far enough and you can kind of see that light coming up over the horizon and knowing that you're headed towards a better place.
Yeah, it's definitely the right people, right seat conversation can be very challenging. And I had a mentor years ago. I was struggling with that, and he had great counsel for me. He said, Tim, you are in essence keeping this person in a role that they're not suited for, and that's not really allowing them to be the best version of themselves. So perhaps by having that conversation, you're relieving them of maybe their own frustrations in the role.
It's funny, Tim. That's exactly right.
And freeing them up to do what God created them to do.
It's remarkable how sometimes when you have those conversations, both sides feel instant relief. And both parties can move forward and do something that's better suited for both of them. So it's not always a bad conversation. Sometimes it's a great conversation because it does free the individual up as well. And we all care about people. We all want the best for people. And so sometimes you really are helping that individual to move on to find what they're really best at.
Yeah, I think it can be a difficult conversation to step into that first step. But once you're in it, again, most of the time I have found that it frees people up to even bigger and better things and opens up a spot for another person in the organization that is ready or better suited for that role. To that end, Jeff, I mean, we've all made hiring decisions with the best of intention. We thought were a good decision. And then we learned perhaps maybe not. How have you guys handled that at ECM as far as person that, I mean, you talked about it, but I mean, have you found yourself in situations where that person really wasn't a cultural fit? They may have been competent in the role, but wasn't a cultural fit. And how did you go about addressing that or taking the steps?
I think it makes it easier when during the conversation of hiring someone, you talk about those core values and you talk about what's the expectations. So then when you do run into that situation that you have someone that's just not a fit, it's easy to go back and remind them of that conversation and to go down the road of, why they're not a fit and why it's not working out. And that doesn't mean they're a bad person or that they are not capable of doing the job. It's just that they're not a fit with us and our organization. And we usually find that certain characteristics about the individual that lead to that conversation, a lack of a commitment, a lack of building relationships with people in the organization, just really overall a lack of being engaged and really exemplifying those core values that we have. And so those are the people that tend to not fit in very well with us, is those that really don't want to become part of the organization and become involved with all that we do. And so it's unfortunate that it happens, but when it does, it's better to recognize it early and to have that open, honest conversation.
Well, and you have an organization that's got more of a purposeful focus, and not everyone necessarily connects with that. They may look at their work in a transactional nature and just say, I'm here to get a paycheck. And I think ECM's a lot more than that when you look at your core values as far as how you ask people to show up. Now, as you think about the culture you've built and the work that you've done, what have been some of the breakthroughs regarding supporting and caring for people that have worked real well?
Active listening is one thing that I say that we always need to be doing. God gave us 2 ears and 1 mouth.
2 ears, 1 mouth.
So,
I use that term a lot.
We need to be actively listening to our employees, and not just listening when they sit down directly and tell us stuff, but listening to passing conversations or listening to things that are bothering them or issues that may come up. Because even though you may be given the moniker of one of the best places to work in Charlotte, it's not a job that's ever done. You can't say we're there and we've accomplished that and check the box and move on, because when you do, you'll start going backwards.
That's when it goes backwards.
It's something that you have to constantly work at. And our leadership team spends a huge part of our meetings working on that employee experience and what are the things that we can continue to do to improve the environment and to improve people wanting to be there and enjoying being there when they get up and go to work every day. And so we spend a lot of time engaged with those employees, talking to them, listening to them, and trying to figure out the things that we can do to make their lives easier and better and make it a place they enjoy coming to.
Yeah, well, and I'd love to kind of transition into some practical aspects of what your leadership team is doing to foster that. I remember years ago when our organization was recognized as the best place to work, we came in second, and the organization ahead of us had chartered a plane and took the entire company to, I think, Dominican Republic. And I'm like, all right, if we're going to lose, I'll lose to that. Sometimes I think people, just because of the popularity of the technology startups in the last 15 years, think about culture as, free beer, nap pods, foosball tables, bring your dog to work, all kinds of interesting things. We have found in many of our interviews with best places to work that there may be some element of that. Fun is clearly something that's important, but what are some of the things you guys look to invest in to, once you've got the right people, to really foster that ongoing growth of the culture? Because it is something, to your point, has to be attended to every day.
Yeah, it's a constant battle. And I agree with you. There are companies out there that do some unique things to try to foster culture. And, I'm sure that some of that plays in and is great for those employees. But when it really comes down to the end of the day, you can throw all of those frills and all of those type things at your employees and make it kind of a fun environment that way. But you can also do some other things that tell the employee that what they do every day matters. Show them that you recognize their work, show them that they're growing and that they're building and that they're an important part of the future of the organization. Give them goals that they understand and that they can accomplish with hard work, and really kind of get everyone in the organization to understand their piece and to understand that if each person's doing their job and doing it well, then we're going to succeed as an organization. And by succeeding, it's going to allow us to do some of those fun things and allow us to have some of those perks that we were just talking about. But I really think that most of us at our basic core level just want to be appreciated for what we do, that we want to know that what we do matters and that we have a part in building something that's bigger than ourselves. And so I think we try to put that in front of our employees, have real open conversations with them about our goals and what we're trying to accomplish and how they fit in and how we can only accomplish those goals doing it together. And I think that's what drives people.
So I heard a lot there. I kind of want to unpack it for a minute if I could, Jeff. I mean, sense of purpose. So giving people a sense of purpose, recognition for the job they do, a way to grow professionally and sounds like personally in the work they do. I mean, it's where they spend the bulk of their days, their time during the work week. A sense of how the work that they do not only matters, but also is contributing to a greater good or a greater sense of, again, mission for the team. So there's a lot of attending to the individual at almost a soul level, kind of not just the hands and feet of their labor, but really their mind and their heart. As you do that, I mean, what are some of the byproducts that you've seen in people, both professionally and personally?
Well, I think that if you do that, most of the time people are going to go home happy. And if they go home happy, then hopefully they're enjoying a good home life and spreading that happiness there. And then they come back to work happy. And so I think just being better individuals, hopefully as a byproduct of that, certainly you heard me mention it a little bit earlier, not getting hung up on the small stuff, not nitpicking people, but giving them an opportunity to grow and worrying about the big stuff. And that sense of purpose, I think, really drives people. And so we tend to see people blossom and really grow and develop and become a better worker, a better person. And that kind of feeds into as well our foundation. We built the ECM Foundation about 9 years ago, 10 years ago now. And so we every year give back 2 charities, one in Charlotte and one in Greenville, South Carolina, where our other office is located. And to see those employees take what they've learned in the workplace and feeling good about that and their development, and then bringing that over into the foundation where they're doing some tremendous work to give back to the communities that we work and live in, has been probably one of the biggest joys that we've experienced.
Yeah, if we could for a minute, Jeff, let's talk about that. Because again, I think there's a theme I've seen, at least in a lot of best places to work over the last few years, which is the idea, again, of everything we've discussed, plus then this whole stewardship nature of giving back and using that as a way to engage people, again, kind of the spirit of people in the community. And the ECM Foundation, like you said, was started 9 years ago, and you are making contributions to organizations as well as giving your people charitable time to contribute their own time.
Yes.
How have you engaged people, and what advice would you have for an entrepreneur or business owner in getting something like that started?
I think that you first need to define what you're trying to accomplish and define what you want to do with that charitable time and that charitable giving. For us, our charity is always built around children in some way. Okay. And so we also wanted to impact the communities where we work and live. So that's why we do the 2 different locations where our offices are located. Because I think people that are helping a charity where they live, it just feels closer. It feels better. You're more willing to give. We developed a charity committee, and that charity committee is the group that is made up of employees from all different departments of the agency. And each year they bring to the leadership team the organizations in Charlotte and in Greenville that they would like us to support during that year.
Okay.
And then during the calendar year, we give our employees time, and we want them to give their time and effort to these 2 charities. And then we bookcase that with 2 fundraising events a year. We have our poker tournament, which I've seen you at a few times.
I was there.
And
not a good poker player, but I enjoy it.
It's always fun. And next week, we actually have our golf tournament. And so that's our 2 fundraising activities. And every penny that we raise in those activities winds up going to the 2 charities. And that's one of our best days of the year in December, when we are able to give money away to the 2 charities we've supported with our time and talent during the year, to not only have given them that time and talent, but to give them some money that they can use to continue what they're doing. And we've been very fortunate that in the 9 years we've done this, we've given away over $300,000 to charities and the community. So that unto itself has just been a tremendous pride for our employees.
Yep.
And I think they're really engaged with that and they love taking part in those activities.
That's awesome. Well, kudos. I think it's a great, again, common denominator to see among a lot of best places to work. Again, that shift over the last decade from perks to purpose. So, and there's still perks in there.
Absolutely.
So being a business owner today, some may say is a little challenging. You had COVID, you had the Great Resignation, which perhaps is still ongoing. You had obviously inflationary times like we haven't seen now in 40 years, a little bit of market uncertainty, and then just a very unhealthy, by my standards, political environment. So it's a pretty challenging time to run a business. And as a best place to work, what are some of the things, other than the obvious, perhaps, Jeff, what are some of the biggest challenges you see faced year over year?
I do think there's been a lot of challenges the last couple of years, but I think that the more transparency you show during those times and the more open, honest conversation you have with your employees, I think they see that.
Yep.
And I think they appreciate that. And I think that you have to try to continue to keep things fresh and to listen to the employees, but you also have a business to run. And you have to, as a business owner, you have to understand that it's a marathon, it's not a sprint. And so, you can't make short-term decisions that are going to impact the long-term results of the company to the detriment. And I share with our folks often that the decisions I make that keep me up at night are not the decisions over an account or a client or something like that. It's the decisions I have to make that impact 80 families. And those are the ones that really keep me up at night and make me worry. But I have to understand as a business owner that the only way we can continue to support those 80 families is to be profitable and be up and operating.
Yep.
And so I think sometimes our employees just don't understand all of that. And I think if you have that open and honest conversation with them and explain why you're making decisions and why things are the way they are, the great majority of them get it. And the great majority of them are going to appreciate the fact that you're having to make that tough decision in order to keep things going for the future.
Well, you bring up a really good point, Jeff, that I think sometimes gets lost in this culture conversation, which is as you're attending to people and you're doing all the things we've discussed in this podcast, that some people, candidly, I've seen from the outside look at that as a sign of weakness. And the reality is it's a sign of great resolve and strength because it does require the transparency and the open communication, because in the absence of the business being healthy, none of that happens. And that's a balancing act I have found personally in talking to other business owners about that truly are invested in the people that work with them and their success. It's something that needs to not only be attended to, but the business itself needs to be run in a fashion that allows everyone to continue to enjoy that and enjoy those benefits and continue to invest in that. And that's the business of business can be challenging. So,
no question.
Yeah. It's funny you said it's a sprint, not a marathon. One of my original mentors told me that years ago. He says, you're sprinting through a marathon. I think I've come to realize it's an ultra marathon beyond a marathon. But yes, sometimes you got to go slow to go fast. So
that's absolutely right.
Yeah. As we wrap up here, any final thoughts for entrepreneurs, business owners listening to this podcast? We've covered some great ground today, but is there anything kind of parting thoughts on building a best places to work culture?
I would just share that, again, listening to your employees, actively listening to them, not just in direct conversation, but hearing what they say. Surveys are a great way. Anonymous surveys are a great way to get some feedback from folks. But I really think that developing the core values for your business and making your decisions based on those core values and making sure that everyone understands what those core values are, and then being compassionate and having that transparent conversation with folks to let them know what you're trying to accomplish and where you're going and how they play in that. I think that communication is extremely important, and you can't communicate enough with employees. There is no such thing as over communication.
Just when you think you've said it all, you have to say it some more.
Absolutely. Absolutely. But it's something that's wonderful. And when you have the right people working together, it really is magical. And we've been very fortunate that we've had a magical ride the last couple of years with some great people that get it, that love what they're doing, and they make ECM who it is.
Oh, that's fantastic. So to kind of wrap up with the advice there, which is to have core values there's conviction amongst the ownership group. There's clarity and continual communication. And you're right, you can never over communicate. And I have found, we always jokingly say around here, it's the 7th or 8th time that people will hear you. And just when you think, oh my gosh, how many more times do I have to say this? It's probably 2 or 3 more times. But that core value anchor really does provide a North Star, if you will, for everyone to understand what it's all about. And then communication, which I love your active listening comment, because I think too often people do get wrapped up in communication is what you say or what you write. And to your point, there's 2 ears. So it's actually what you hear, and not just hear, but actively listen to and understand. And then that gives you the opportunity to understand where people are coming from, to have that completely transparent, open dialogue about what is needed to keep it all healthy and going forward. So really enjoyed the time today, Jeff. Thank you for investing this time with us. Congratulations on 35 years here in a couple days. Congratulations on the success of Best Places to Work, but most importantly, congratulations on those 80 families that you guys are attending to and helping achieve great success in their life, both personally and professionally. Well done.
Tim, thank you so much. Thanks for having me, and keep up the great work with your podcast. They're a really, really good series.
Well, thank you. Thank you. So we are wrapping up here another episode of Winning Through Culture with Jeff Haney, president of ECM. Until we are together again, be well, be impactful, and be relevant.